Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check.
Algo mejor. Ya se habían salido, ¿no? Entonces, alguien dijo, no, pues que ya se fueron, creo que estaban con... Digo, ¿estaban? Me da mucho gusto. Tantos.
Jorge, good to see you. Josh Dostis. Yeah. It's Everland. Everland. Yeah, yeah. See, afterwards, talk after. It's on pizza shop.
We don't have enough. So we can, I think we can. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to start in a second if people want to sit down or not, or take their seats. Sorry about the delay. There was a little bit of issue getting some of our speakers into the actual building. So we apologize and thank you so much to everyone for your patience. My name is Sarah Walker. I work with WCS. I'm leading our efforts to more fully develop climate finance programs around the world that allow our partners, both our government partners, our IPLC partners, to employ climate finance where it makes sense to sustainably manage their ecosystems and natural systems. WCS itself has been involved in the development of large-scale standalone projects for over 15 years and is continuing to do so with our government and IPLC partners. However, in addition to these site-based demonstrations of the effective use of carbon finance, we're also actively engaged in efforts to both ensure effective measurement and monitoring approaches are created, but also assist our government counterparts in the potential transition, and IPCL partners, PLC partners, in their potential transition to scale REDD+ through jurisdictional program development where it makes sense. And today's event is focused specifically on that, the relatively new era in REDD+, the era of development of jurisdictional REDD carbon credits into the voluntary carbon market. As we all know, jurisdictional REDD itself is not a new concept, of course. Countries have been leading in building REDD readiness for over 2 decades, supported in large part by multilateral mechanisms such as UN REDD, FCPF, many others. And there's also been a number of results-based programs in existence, rewarding countrywide action to reduce deforestation. This includes billions of bilateral and multilateral funds committed for Brazil, Indonesia, Colombia, Guyana, Ecuador, and including the $500 million Green Climate Fund, results-based payments pilot program. Meanwhile, in the VCM, where in 2022, REDD credits sold at a premium of 60% compared to the average emission reductions credits, the demand is expected to outstrip supply. So there's a real need to expand the supply of carbon credits, and that requires the expansion of carbon finance to allow those carbon projects and carbon credits to be developed. And despite some recent press causing some uncertainty in the VCM, and honestly, somewhat because of this, we think there's a growing demand for high quality carbon credits generated from jurisdictional systems and nested programs. And I think this means that there will be a growing opportunity for countries and jurisdictions to be adequately rewarded for addressing the real drivers of deforestation and degradation as a meaningful way to overcome, honestly, the opportunity costs of other economic activities like agriculture and timber production. You know, countries have to face economic decisions, right? Moving towards REDD+ is an economic and a development decision. And there are many opportunities in the global markets. Looking forward to 2030, 2050, demand is projected to come from companies making commitments to net zero, CORSIA, other compliance systems, carbon neutrality claims, sovereign buyers, a whole host of groups. And some people think that about 80% of this demand is going to come in the form of net zero commitments, which are not likely to require a corresponding adjustment, right? Which means there's a real demand for voluntary market credits to be produced. while the remaining 20% is expected to come from transactions requiring corresponding adjustments. And, we're really getting a little bit concerned that the demand supply gap will continue to increase. And also we need to ensure that the credits that are delivered are of high integrity when we are developing these projects, that they result in high integrity credits. And it's significant, for example, today that we have Guyana represented, as Guyana is currently the only country to date globally to have issued verified jurisdictional red carbon credits against the ARC-TREES standard, although several countries are also quite close to realizing this achievement. This relatively slow pace of progress reflects the intensity of resources and capital needed to operationalize jurisdictional scale crediting systems. This is not an easy task. It's a complicated task that requires a whole of government coordination, development of nesting strategy, technical capacity at all levels of government and civil society, seed capital, financial and legal tools, infrastructure for high quality carbon credit value transactions, along with benefit sharing and safeguard systems. This is a complicated system, and all of these components need to come together when developing a jurisdictional program. As civil society, buyers, donors, we need to hear more about the challenges that have been faced by governments and IPLC stakeholders and what their needs are and other ways we can help them and help leverage our knowledge and help them to transition to these programs. And this event, we hope, is hopefully one of many that will advance the needed dialogue and lead to actions that can accelerate this transition into this next stage in the evolution of REDD+. I'd like to introduce our speakers, and I'm going to apologize in advance for some of my mispronunciation of some of the names, and maybe some of the components of the organization they're working in. So I apologize in advance. First, we have Pradeepa say it again. Bolanat, I'm so sorry. Pradeepa is an environmental economist who's served as the head of planning and development for the Guyana Forest Commission up to January of 2020, and is now at the Ministry of Natural Resources in Guyana as a senior director of climate. She was one of the members leading the HFLD program and MRV systems for Guyana, has been a key technical expert in the implementation activities underway under the Guyana-Norway bilateral agreement. We also have Derek John, also from Guyana. Derek is currently serving in his second term as the chair of the National Chashaus Council of Guyana, which is the national body of elected village leaders from every Amerindian village in Guyana. He's also a regional director counselor, a board member of the Guyana Forest Commission, and a member of the National Committee for EU Pledged Tea Program of Guyana. Then we have Fermin Shamatani from Anakap. Yes, Anakap. He's the leader of the Harakut people of Madre de Dios, Peru, and president of Anakap. His organization brings together the executors of the administration of contracts of the communal reserves of Peru, which manages 5 million hectares of forest between protected areas and communal territories. And he's been a real pioneer in the implementation of Amazonian Indigenous REDD. He's also the first Indigenous person to be a member of the board of directors of the senior management of the National Service of Protected and Natural Areas of Peru, and is a member of the advisory board for the Kawari Fund managed by Rewild. We also have Daniela Ortega Pacheco. There on the end. Daniela is a member of Biocarbon and is a co-chair of the expert panel on ICVCM, and currently serves as an advisory committee member at the Inter-American Institute of Cooperation on Agricultural Agriculture's program on climate change and natural resource. During COP21 in Paris, he served as the Minister of the Environment of Ecuador and was entrusted with the role of co-chair of the region REDD Plus ministerial negotiations by the French presidency. Josh, you want to join us or no? Sure. Oh, okay. I didn't even know you were members of SUS. We also have Josh Tussison from Everland. He's the president of Everland, and prior to joining Everland, he was a senior vice president at Rainforest Alliance, where he was responsible for worldwide field operations and sustainable agriculture, forestry, and climate finance. Josh has also led leadership and senior advisory roles and numerous enterprises focused on harnessing financial markets to solve systemic environmental and social issues. All right, people learn. We also have Jorge Mario Zuniga, sorry for my pronunciation, from FONAFIFO. He's been the general director of FONAFIFO in Costa Rica since 1993. Is a specialist in environmental services with more than 25 years of experience in the development and implementation of innovative financing mechanisms and mobilization of resources for PES at the national and international level. He also is a delegate for Costa Rica in negotiations of free trading agreements, as well as many other attributes. Finally, we have Beto Borges, okay, sorry, from Forest Friends. He serves as the Director of Communities and Territorial Governance Initiative at Forest Friends. He's over 30 years of experience in working with Indigenous and other local communities in the Amazon and elsewhere in Latin America to benefit from technical support and climate and conservation finance in recognition of their rights in forest stewardship. He helped develop several community-based sustainable forest value chains initiatives, co-led Surrey Carbon Project and the first Indigenous REDD Plus project, and contributed to setting social safeguards and benefit sharing mechanisms for ACRE's CISA jurisdictional programs, among other initiatives. Thank you so much, and thank you to all our colleagues for joining us. I think before we start with, please correct me, Pradeepa, before we start with questions, we're going to see a short video. Maybe you guys want to explain this video.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you everyone for making time to listen to the presentation and hopefully ask some questions at the end of the presentation. We wanted to open with sharing a bit of information on Guyana in terms of our Indigenous peoples. In Guyana, we have about 13% of our landmass as titled Amerindian. In Guyana, our Indigenous peoples are called Amerindians. And 13% of Guyana's forests are titled Amerindian villages. And within Guyana, there is a head of every village, and that head is called a Tushao. And every village elects a Tushao to lead them and to lead the village and its activities. And all of those Tushaos, 242 Tushaos, get together and they form a National Tushaos Council. Here with us today is Mr. Derek John, Tushao Derek John. And Derek is the Chief of Chiefs, the Tushao of Tushaos. He's the chairperson of the National Tushaos Council. And we'll share with you a brief PowerPoint presentation explaining about how the National Tushaos Council is structured, the way that the decision-making process is executed, and how this connects to the jurisdictional REDD Plus program. Over to Derek.
Thank you, Ms. Pradeepa. So as Pradeepa has mentioned, my name is Derek John, the chairman of the National Tushaos Council. The National Tushaos Council is an established body according to the Amerindian Act of 2006. It entails all elected officials from the 242 Amerindian villages in the 10 administrative regions of Guyana. There are 10 additional officials who make up the executive council. So from the council, we have the chairman, and I will show the structure. So just as a thing, so we have the chairman, the vice chairman, and then secretary, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary. Those are the core members. After the core members, we have the regional reps because Guyana is a country with 10 administrative regions, and all 10 administration regions have indigenous peoples living in those regions. So, and then we have all the other two shows from the 242 communities. So this is a picture of our recently conference that we had in last month. This is the secretariat. So our role of the National Two Shows Council on the LCA Benefit Sharing Program. So in last year, in 2022, we have supported Guyana's low carbon development strategy in a resolution where all of the two shows had signed on to that resolution. The NTCC was very crucial in developing crucial documents in terms of the benefit sharing mechanism, where the 15% from the LCS funds will be given to all villages, satellites. And when I say all villages, because we have 134 title villages, and then we have the rest that are non-title, settlements and so forth. Some of those villages have forests and some do not. But we looked at where all villages will have equitable benefit sharing from that program. The NTC also spearheaded the process in developing outline village plans, what we call the VSPs template, so that we can able to assist village to make it a little bit more easier for them to put together their plans and their ideas as it relates to the village development plans that they have to submit to the Office of the President on climate change. So the NTC plays a very integral role in collaborating with the Ministry of Marine Affairs and the LCDS Secretariat to provide key documents and everything that is necessary. We also had to develop some guidelines as it relates to the Finance Committee so that we can able to have a structure as it relates to manage those resources. I must mention that in terms of consultation, as it relates to the benefit sharing, there was a 7-month period that all indigenous communities and people right across Guyana was involved in a 7-month consultation where we had an opportunity to raise concerns and make our inputs. The NTC also support in terms of building the capacity of village leaders so that they can able to contribute meaningfully in developing their VSPs, or what we call the village sustainable plans. And I have a list of Tushau Michael Thomas, who is the chairman of the South Rupununi Development Council, and he is also the treasurer of the National Tushau Council. He works extensively in the South Rupununi Region 9. Region 9 is one of the largest region that have a lot of indigenous population there. And then we have the vice chair, Tushau Sonia Lachman. She worked in the Region 2 area and the Muruko sub-region. Then we have Tushau Timothy. He assisted with the Region 4. And then the list goes on to show Jeremy with Muruko sub-region, to show Shane, Lower Maz, to show Lenny, and so forth. We also, in collaboration with the Conservation International, we assist communities, and we are in the process of doing more. We have assisted Carroll, Great Falls, Rockstones, and Cuthberts, Maracaibo, and Campbelltown, but we will continue to work with more to develop their 10-year strategic plan, which is very critical for this program. They come in line so that we will now have a roadmap how we will able to invest these crucial funds so that it can really bring benefits to indigenous villages. I will show you some of the examples with like Region 2, you have a village near Bethany. They are presently focusing on ecotourism. They have recently developed and finished a guest house where they can have a place of to accommodate guests when they enter that village. Also, another project that they use the LCDS fund is to build a pontoon that will be able to help transport farm produce and also timber and other forest products. And they also invest their money into buying a tractor and trailer to make it more easier to transport whatever resources coming from the forest or farm produce. Also, there is a women's group, and this building is where it will focus to help and house a women's group where they can do sewing and other activities that the women are involved in, and also building proper washroom facilities in public spaces. For Aishalton, which is a village in the Region 9, is a very remote village, right down deep south. They have invested their funds into building a kitchen, and so this will able to assist the community of have a proper place to prepare hot meal, because that's another program that the indigenous peoples are benefiting from, where the government is providing funds that so that the school children going to school can have a balanced diet. And so the village council have decided to build that facility there. Also, women's group, poultry rearing. And so this is just a photograph to show where some of those funds. Also, they are investing in a tractor and trailer. Kitchen garden, where they will plant their own organic produce, and they will supply the kitchen, the hot meal kitchen, so that they can have fresh, balanced diet when they serve the children on a daily basis. For Rivers View, that's a village in region number 10. They also did some things where will be they build a program facility for the school children, a barn in the middle, and then also that's a generator house where they will be housing the generator. So that structure in the center, it's a village benab that they will have a cafeteria that they will use to sell like beverages and so forth, community people and so forth. St. Cuthbert's, they invest their money to buy solar lights so that they can now illuminate their village. And also they are presently working on a meeting place for the village. So all in all, we see that villages have different projects that they had invested their funds. This one community here, I'm just showing you a solar farm, because more and more indigenous people we are trying to move away from fossil fuel generation to more of renewable energy. And this is a typical example of my village that the government had invested in the solar farms. So this is supplying the entire village now with cleaner energy. This is just a recently achievement that the National Two Shows Council has benefited from some resources from the government to have our own secretariat. In the past, we would normally rent buildings, but now we are proud to have our own secretariat. These are some of our staff and other stakeholders and executive members in our secretariat. This photograph depicts where the National Two Show Council work with villages to develop their VSP. So we were the guiding persons there to help them to put their ideas together. You know, we allow them to come up with their ideas, and then we were like the technical people. And this is where we would normally sit and we will come and report back to the council what achievements and develop other strategies, how we can go about continuing this great work and support our indigenous brothers and sisters. So in a nutshell, I just want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Derek, John. Really, I think you really provided us with the real insights into what funds moving from carbon finance onto the ground really look like in reality, right? These are funds that are used by local community members, people, the citizens of their country to ensure that their development is aligned with their desires and their needs to work positively with their local environment and their forests and use those resources effectively. So thank you so much. It's very important for us to think about this, not just in these theoretical terms, right? But to see what does it actually mean on the ground when finance flows to countries and they're able to effectively manage their own lands. So great to see that. And you kind of already answered one of my first questions I think I have to say. But our first topic is really related to what you just presented on, which is how jurisdictions and other stakeholders have assessed the potential of carbon finance in terms of its impact on decision-making over land use and economic development. These are not like just do both, right? You have to make an economic decision if you're looking at REDD. This is always a decision you could have made a different economic decision of how you were going to use your lands. And I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything else about your experience with designing and implementing the benefit sharing system in Guyana.
Yeah, so because this is a new initiative, it's a work in progress, and there was a lot of lessons learned. A lot of capacities have to be built, so to bring Indigenous people in line with this whole new initiative. And that's why extensive consultation have been done, and we continue to work with other stakeholders, CI, Office of Climate Change, Ministry of Marine Affairs, so that we can all have the one agenda as we move forward, and so that we could bring our Indigenous brothers and sisters in line so they could understand this concept. It was a little bit challenging because due to the geographical location of our Indigenous brothers and sisters right across Guyana, we had to go out there practically on the ground and work with them. We have to develop the concept into various local languages, local Indigenous languages, so that they can understand the whole concept. So those are some of the challenges, but I think it worked out fairly well. And today, based upon what we can see the fruits of the hard work we have been doing. But this could not have been achieved if we would not have that people's support on the ground, the buy-in from the people. And so I think now we are more in a better position as we align our agendas as it relates to developing our communities and villages. And we were able to have that support from the government, where they were able to give us 15% from that forced carbon financing that they have agreed with. And so I'm very proud to say that as Indigenous living in Guyana, it's a pioneer that really put Guyana on the map as it relates to really pushing climate change and setting up mechanisms how we can able to fight against global warming and so forth. As it relates to using our natural resources so that we can have true benefits for our forests. And it is something that speaks volume for us. So that how you can sustainably manage your natural resources. So once again, I said that is something that we as a team, Indigenous people, and the government of Guyana and other stakeholders, we are working on. I know that you must have persons that are just do not understand, or probably they're not very supportive, because that's one of the challenges we have a few people who would not support it, and they would go about and confusing the minds of people. But that's their right. They have to speak. I don't know if you can. Anybody could actually be on one page at the same time. But so we hopefully though that as we continue to work uh, and truly carry the message out there and try to build the capacities of our people, that someday we all can be on the same page and we can speak with the same voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to mention that we have a new addition to our team here, Roselyne Adeje. From Roselyne serves as the National REDD focal point for Ghana and is a highly accomplished climate policy and forest governance expert with over 17 years worth of experience working with the national government of Ghana. And she's in charge of managing the forest landscape programs such as the Ghana Cocoa Forest REDD Plus program and the Ghana Shea Landscape Emission Reductions program. She's also obviously very globally known for her voice and Forest and REDD Plus. It's been instrumental in other international processes. Well, welcome, Roselyne. I'm sorry you had some troubles getting into the room. I wanted to turn now to Jorge Rodriguez. Costa Rica has participated in the FCPF Carbon Fund, the Green Climate Fund. What are the expectations of Costa Rica for the voluntary carbon market? Do you expect if Costa Rican was to enter the voluntary carbon market, how would that change its expectations and how would it design its programs?
Sí, muy buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias a todas y todos. Bueno, efectivamente, como ustedes muchos conocerán, Costa Rica desde hace décadas apostó a aspirar a un desarrollo verde en armonía con la naturaleza. Producto de ello es que hemos tenido decimos que hoy tenemos más bosque que el que teníamos ayer, porque una serie de políticas desde muchos años atrás han permitido recuperar esa cobertura y fortalecer no solamente las áreas silvestres protegidas, sino también revelar el verdadero valor de los bosques más allá de la madera. Y conste que digo, no estamos renunciando al valor de la madera, sino estamos diciendo el bosque es valioso por la madera y por los servicios ecosistémicos que se derivan de su existencia. Nosotros venimos trabajando desde hace muchos años, desde que se lanzó el programa REDD en el Bali, desde el año 2007 hemos venido trabajando con ello. Creemos que muchas de las cosas que hoy Costa Rica presenta ha sido producto de todo el apoyo que hemos recibido de la comunidad internacional para el proceso readiness, elaborado por el FCPF del Banco Mundial, en donde hoy por hoy decimos nosotros que tenemos una base muy robusta de datos que nos permiten no solamente a nosotros los costarricenses decir que efectivamente vamos por buen camino y que hemos hecho bien las cosas, sino también decirle a los entes fiscalizadores nacionales e internacionales que efectivamente Costa Rica ha aplicado los recursos con el fin que se estableció. Tenemos también en todo este proceso de construcción de la estrategia REDD, todo ese fortalecimiento que nos ha llevado a decir hoy por hoy que Costa Rica, particularmente con todos los dueños de tierra, pero particularmente con los hermanos indígenas, ha hecho un proceso de consulta muy robusto. Muchos de los recursos que nosotros recibimos del FCPF para prepararnos, el 35% de esos recursos, Costa Rica definió que los iba a dedicar para hacer un proceso robusto de consulta con los territorios indígenas. ¿Y por qué ello? Por una simple razón, creo yo. Los territorios indígenas son, si bien es cierto, la población es 105,000 personas de 5,100,000, pero efectivamente son dueños del 8% del territorio nacional. O sea, hoy por hoy en Costa Rica, el mayor terrateniente de bosques son los territorios indígenas. Y hemos venido trabajando con ellos en un proceso muy robusto, creo que hemos generado mucha confianza y eso es lo que nos ha permitido a nosotros presentar, no solamente por los logros que hemos hecho con ellos, sino por todos los demás campesinos, dueños de tierras, dueños de bosque, decirle al mundo y como tal que Costa Rica ha invertido mucho, sigue invirtiendo mucho y que necesitamos ese apoyo financiero para continuar conservando y aumentando esos grandes esfuerzos que venimos realizando y que se reflejan también en la NS que Costa Rica presentó. Pero estamos hablando de finanzas climáticas también, y nosotros decimos, y Costa Rica ha sido muy vocal a nivel internacional y durante muchos años, que realmente los esfuerzos que el país ha hecho no se han reconocido financieramente con respecto a lo que nosotros invertimos en ello. Y es precisamente por eso que ahora vemos, hace 2 años firmamos con el Fondo Verde del Clima, firmamos con el Fondo Cooperativo de Carbono para los Bosques, 2 proyectos que en total suman 115 millones de dólares. Pero en sí, Costa Rica como tal, conscientes de la necesidad de recursos que se necesitan para no solamente mantener el esfuerzo, sino aumentarlo, es que aspiramos a las nuevas iniciativas como Emergent, con LIF, con PRELIF, con todos estos proyectos que vienen en donde nosotros creemos que mucho el financiamiento que el país necesita para fortalecer lo que viene haciendo va a venir de esa fuente de recursos. Pero también aquí una cosa muy importante y que lo he oído ayer y lo he oído hoy también en diferentes foros. Tal vez aquí importantísimo resaltar es cuál es la orientación de esos recursos que recibimos para seguir haciendo las cosas de la mejor forma. Y particularmente con mucha satisfacción les puedo decir que con respecto a los territorios indígenas, después de 14 años de trabajar conjuntamente ellos, autónomos y respetando la autodeterminación, definieron que si cada territorio indígena quería gozar de los beneficios de los recursos financieros, tenía que tener un plan ambiental forestal territorial. Y los 24 territorios indígenas en una asamblea nacional dijeron, ok, nos montamos en eso. Ellos mismos decidieron eso. Hoy por hoy les puedo contar que ya hay 3 de los 24 territorios indígenas que hicieron su plan ambiental forestal territorial. ¿Y qué es eso? Eso es un instrumento de planificación, un instrumento de desarrollo, en donde ese documento o ese plan lo construyeron todas las personas que están dentro del territorio, en donde ellos libre y autónomamente definieron cuáles son las prioridades de inversión, qué es lo que necesitan, y ahí es donde van a orientar los recursos. Y una cosa muy importante, tal vez ya para concluir, uno deseara tener más tiempo para comentar un poco más las experiencias. Ahora el 7 y el 8 de julio tuvimos en San José, en nuestra capital, un taller con los 24 territorios indígenas. Y le comentamos también, porque de forma transparente Costa Rica les ha dicho, bueno, hicimos estas 2 negociaciones con el Fondo Verde del Clima, hicimos esta negociación con el Fondo Cooperativo de Carbono para los Bosques del Banco Mundial, pero también están en lista algunas otras iniciativas que estamos explorando y estamos negociando, llámese LIF, llámese otras iniciativas que por ahí Costa Rica ha recibido cartas de interés. Y la decisión de estos territorios indígenas, y fue un mensaje que le mandaron al gobierno que está en la declaración, fue cualquier recurso que venga producto de las negociaciones de la reducción de emisiones del país y que tengan que ver con nuestros bosques, es obligatorio para cada territorio que los recursos que eventualmente se generen tengan que utilizarse como plan de planificación o instrumento de planificación, ese plan ambiental forestal territorial en respeto de todo este proceso constructivo de la estrategia REDD. Entonces, para concluir, le digo, la idea de Costa Rica aspira a tener diferentes fuentes de financiamiento. El mercado es uno de ellos. Las fuentes de no mercado también estamos explorando esas opciones porque también creemos que es justo y necesario que todo ese esfuerzo que hacemos como país para proteger nuestros bosques sea compensado también económicamente, no solamente por los beneficios de los servicios ecosistémicos que brindan esas masas boscosas a los costarricenses, sino también por el efecto positivo que tiene para el clima a nivel planetario. Muchas gracias.
Excellent. I think the whole world often looks to a lot of the members up on the stage for what has been working well when the national government takes such large commitments. So I commend you all. Next, I want to move on to another topic that concerns what are the significant challenges that jurisdictions and other proponents face when they continue to face when they're trying to stand up their jurisdictional programs for carbon market finance. Rosaline, I wanted to reach out to you. How important is it really to Ghana to scale its national program? And how are you driving that scale into the future through public-private partnerships?
Thank you very much, and very good afternoon. Sorry for being late. Traffic issues, and then I missed the room altogether. So thank you, Stephanie, for getting me, and Christy for alerting me. So there is a lot that I believe that not just Ghana, but so many forest countries would want to do to achieve scale. But the point is that it's not just about what forest countries can do or would want to do, because this is a partnership. And to really achieve scale, you need all the different stakeholders, different players to be on the table. And when I was considering this particular event and other events, and no offense, when I see sentences such as, how can the VCM support, I think that we get it wrong. The VCM is not supporting. The VCM has a responsibility. When we say support, it looks like it's help and people can sit on the bench and you're just coming in to provide some sort of support, but climate change is happening and it's going to affect all of us. So it's not about support, it's about how we can partner. It's about what responsibility, what roles we have to play across different partners. And so if we don't see it that way, we keep giving a lot of responsibility to tropical forest countries. And that's why I think that issues such as price has become an issue, because you have the demand side really signaling what the price should be. And sometimes you wonder where sort of the thinking arrived or came from to get to where we have the carbon prices at where they should be. Now, going forward, if we are to make this partnership work, a country like Ghana expects that, as you were talking about the number of years, Hoe Marie also mentioned that we've been on different panels together, Ghana, Costa Rica. We've built so much capacity, but and we build that capacity, I mean, for Ghana, mainly through the FCPF process, which is a very rigorous process. And then you realize that we are entering into voluntary carbon market discussions, and you are being faced with the whole questions all over again. Question is, where did that track record go? When we are interviewing people for positions, we check their experience, we check their track record. I believe that counts for something. So if forest countries have been in this for 10, 8, 12, 14 years, that track record should be recognized. And we expect that it would become the foundation, the trust that is needed. We don't want to start the process all over again because the voluntary carbon market, so we have to start all over again. We need to prove ourselves all over again to our partners. It doesn't really work. It takes us back. We need to talk over and over again. And the issue even is that it's the same commodity, carbon. In most cases, it's the same landscapes we are talking about. So how are we treating 10 years? How are we treating 14 years? The second is that if we want to go forward, and I keep hearing that there is demand, maybe before the Guardian articles started coming in, and we've heard about demand, but that demand we don't see. And so we need to see the demand actually becoming tangible, because the demand is in the air. When is the demand going to drop? The demand is like carbon that we can see. We need to feel the demand, and we need to actually get into transactions, signing actual transactions that are based on trust, that are going to deliver this particular demand, because we don't have so much time. And again, if we need to have that demand to work, a country like Ghana would expect that there isn't so much interference in the systems that we are setting up. Because you have partners come in, and for example, we are engaging with one private sector entity. Every single meeting that we are having, they want to be part. Question is, why do you want to be part of every system that we've set up? We have different working groups. When it's time to be part, different stakeholders come to the table, because it becomes too laborious. And the point also is that private sector entities from our end, we've seen, are not joining to build capacity, because they also need capacity anyway, but they are joining to scrutinize every single process, and it doesn't really help. So we wouldn't really want to see that. And again, if we want to scale, we would want to scale with the right price for carbon. And that price could be different for Costa Rica. It could be different for Ghana. And we have to be able to justify that price as countries. It shouldn't be a price that is already predetermined by the demand side, without any recourse to how we generate a ton of carbon, which is not an easy job. And so if we are going to scale and we are going to move forward, we need to really work on price. And This is a topic that is really dear to me because anytime we talk about reaching local people, reaching indigenous people, making impact, if you don't have that scale of payment, you are not really going to make that impact. I am very proud about the FCPF process. It has paid the first payments to Ghana, made the first payments to Ghana. I mean, what farmers are buying are cutlasses. It's not that much. If we are contending with issues such as illegal mining and illegal logging, they are paying more. And so if we really want to keep our forest intact, the question that we should be asking is, what price are we paying for? It's not just about $5 or $10. We are paying a price to keep the forest standing against illegal mining, against illegal logging, that has mafias that is paying more, and that has a very rich financial institution. That's what we are battling against. And then lastly, I would want to talk about delivery of upfront finance. If we are not able to deliver some upfront finance to some countries, it's not going to work. And in Ghana, we need upfront finance for so many things. We started our REDD+ implementation using a phased approach. So we are into different landscapes with different things at different times. So you realize that the capacity we've built in our cocoa forest landscape is not the same as we have built in our share landscape. So we might need more finance, even moving within that same cocoa landscape, because we are just in a subset of that cocoa landscape. And if you want to scale, you need to expand the scale of engagements, the scale of stakeholder consultations, the scale of setting up governance structures. And all these come with some upfront finance. The World Bank, through its FCPF, never said that we are going to put a bucket of money somewhere to do this later. Maybe we should have also negotiated for that, but we didn't. So that's our case. If we want to scale, we need upfront finance to do all these. But we are not saying that give us upfront finance to start from scratch. There's already a record that we've received results-based payments. So there should be that guarantee that definitely that upfront finance will be covered eventually with carbon payments. And that's where I'll end with my submission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. I feel like, you know, what you said really encapsulated a lot of the things I think a lot, right? We need to start doing this. We need to start building it, and we need to have the supposed demand for carbon credits actually be realized through matching of prices. So that brings me to Josh. A question to Josh. You know, as the market is seems to be interested more and more in jurisdictional REDD credits, can you speak from your perspective on the trends in market demand for jurisdictional REDD crediting, including pricing, emerging challenges, opportunities? Where do you see that headed right now?
Well, I didn't know I was supposed to bring a crystal ball to the conversation, and I can tell you that the one I have at home is filled with clouds. So I don't want to stand up here or sit here with especially mindful of the sense of responsibility. Actually, Rosalind, I think what you said was very powerful, and it landed, because we can't speak half truths or, you know, speculate. So I would only be able to speculate. I don't know. It just comes to a very fundamental question. You're asking a fundamental question, Rosalind. Are people and organizations in the global north living outside of your forests and your communities, are they willing to pay what is needed over the right amount of time that is going to be needed, which is a long time, to support you in choosing conservation as a sustainable development path? It's the question, actually. Are we willing to do it for projects, for jurisdictions? It's basically the same question. And so what is it going to take for the market to step up and do that? I think what is valuable about the experience of the last few years is that the growth was very, very large. And what it communicated was a real willingness, and a willingness in when it comes to doing transactions. I mean, we have done a lot of transactions in our organization, maybe 55 million tons over the past few years, just to put scale on it. Like, we've done a lot of transactions, and and so there is willingness to see money flowing at a really large level at good prices for what? For what? And to whom? For change and for change agents. And so the first and most important thing I really believe, and it's sort of related, but sort of not to the crisis that the voluntary markets seem to be in right now, is, buyers want to hear and know about what the Tusho are doing. What you just described is exactly what's needed. It's exactly it. It's communities who are on the front lines, who have decisions. They're just in their own free autonomous will, they're going to make decisions. Here is our land, or here's some land right here, and it's not ours, but here it is. We can do lots of things here, and we have a lot of needs. And so, we're going to choose to do this. They want to see people saying, yeah, we have governance, we have a traditional way, we've been approached in a good way, in the right way that's right for us. And we've taken a decision based on our own consultation and our own autonomy. And we're going to get into a business deal here. Is it a business deal with the government, with private actors? It's a business deal. And we're going to receive something, and we're going to do something. We're going to invest this money to do things that matter the most to us. And that's the way we gain value for our choice to do conservation, because we have lots of other things that we could do. They want to see that type of governance, that type of transparency, and money flowing directly to the ground, to communities who have the choices. That's what buyers want to see, for sure.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
In terms of, to speak to Rosalind's request, right, which is around forward finance, right, upfront financing. Can you speak to the desire, like the knowledge space of buyers around this need, and whether or not they might want credits that have all of that, but how do you see this balance between buying credits and providing the upfront financing to ensure that those credits actually exist?
If there's any good use for markets, it's exactly for this. It's for, what do markets do? What do people in markets do? They take risks. They make investments. And so we, as part of our transacting, and Sarah, because we work really closely with WCS on this, we've been able to get plenty of investment for beautiful community-based, community-centered projects. We work mostly in the project modality to date. But transactions that involve upfront finance of a good amount, the kind that's really needed to work with communities, build capacity, all of that sort of stuff is definitely available. The issue now, though, with the voluntary carbon market is it will be the same when we get to jurisdictional as it is for projects, which is that to some degree, the notion of the voluntary market as a thing that is good at all has been really discredited to a great degree. And there's a storm cloud that's up above this. And so the real issue is that there's not a safe space for buyers to go ahead and do the thing that they do, for investors to do the thing that they do, which is to take risk and get involved in this. They want to, they're willing to do so, but they're only willing to do so if they don't get completely shredded for as a thank you for going ahead to do something that is really needed. And I think just to close and really just give the voice and the microphone to everybody here in the panel, that sense of responsibility is just extraordinarily important. Coming forward with exactly what you said, this is what the market needs to hear, actually, because the voices of you, your governments, your communities, are the voices that we need to respond to. This market is in responsibility and in response to what you want and need. We are providing service, and I don't think we're doing a great job of it right now. So we have to listen a little better to what you're saying.
Thank you so much. One of the things that is often discussed a lot when we're thinking about designing jurisdictional programs, one of the things people often state is there needs to be full and effective participation of IPLCs, right? But what I want to ask our panelists, Fermin, and others on the group, Beto, what does that, what does that really look like for you? How can a program be designed to actually result in being able to call themselves having had full and effective participation in the design of any kind of jurisdictional program? It's one thing to say that you're doing that when you're looking at a site basis, but to say that you're achieving that at the scale of a jurisdiction, it seems quite challenging. Any suggestions you can offer the audience in our group?
Gracias por la pregunta. Bueno, es importante tener en cuenta de que para la participación plena efectiva de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales es primero tener en cuenta tres principios, ¿no? Uno es el tema de la confianza, porque por la relación histórica que hemos tenido con los gobiernos entre pueblos indígenas, toma tiempo construir confianza con los pueblos indígenas, ¿no? Y el otro es el tema de los procesos que tiene que tener el enfoque intercultural, el respeto a sus opiniones, el respeto a su forma de pensar, el respeto a su propia gobernanza, los protocolos. Y el otro principio es el tema de la transparencia que debe tener, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que son tres principios claves. ¿Por qué? Porque en estos procesos de red se tiene que empezar a considerar a los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales como protagonistas, como socios, ¿no? Porque no solamente es recibir, ¿no? Es también creer en sus propias capacidades y la contribución importante que pueden dar los propios pueblos indígenas, comunidades locales. ¿Ya? Y hablando de eso, tiene que haber una información suficiente, ¿no? Para que en estos procesos, ¿no?, de participación plena y efectiva, tiene que haber una información suficiente, ¿no? Entonces, la información lo tiene la otra parte y la información no lo saben los pueblos indígenas. Por eso es que no se puede tomar buenas decisiones, soluciones viables que enfrentan los pueblos indígenas. Y el otro es que se tiene que considerar que algo clave, ¿no? Y con eso estamos diciendo que hay que construir, ¿no?, las condiciones habilitantes para que los pueblos indígenas puedan negociar en igualdad de condiciones. Nos ha pasado allá, en Perú, experiencias como esa. Entonces, una participación plena efectiva es desde el inicio, ¿no? ¿Cómo le preparas? ¿Cómo nos preparamos? ¿Cómo construimos juntos? ¿Cómo generamos confianza? ¿No? Y en estos procesos también tiene que haber generar el acompañamiento permanente, continuo. Entonces, no solamente termina el tema de consulta, ¿no?, a los pueblos indígenas, ¿no?, como un momento de este proceso de consulta previa. Entonces, para los acuerdos finales, al final de la consulta, tiene que haber ya reuniones permanentes, continuos, ¿no? Y les cito el caso para poner un ejemplo, por ejemplo, el plan de inversión forestal, que nosotros como organizaciones indígenas allá en Perú hemos participado todo el proceso. Hemos construido desde el inicio. Pero se contrata, se deja la responsabilidad para que lleve este proceso a otras personas que tienen toda la buena intención, ¿no? Pero hay unas cosas que se les escapan, ¿no? Y entonces, en la etapa final, nosotros exigimos el documento cómo está eso, pero nos dimos cuenta de que nada de lo que se ha aportado se había considerado en el documento final de los pueblos indígenas. O sea, por eso es que nosotros exigimos que en estos procesos de red, ¿no? El tema de red jurisdiccional tiene que ser permanente desde el inicio al final y empezar a considerar a los pueblos indígenas como locales como socios y no tanto beneficiarios, ¿no? Y para que puedan dialogar, negociar en igualdad de condiciones.
So question is the enabling conditions, if I understand correctly, for IPLCs to benefit from jurisdictional finance. And I would add, if I may, well, greetings everybody. Also project-based, because I work with Forest Strands, community initiatives with Forest Strands. I'm from Brazil. And what I've learned over 30 plus years working with indigenous peoples is that you know, they really have to be included in the design of, be it jurisdictional, be it project-based. We have benefited from an experience. Some of you may have heard of the Surrey Carbon Project. We're talking about 10 years ago. There are a lot of lessons from that. And as a result of that process, we were immersed, myself in particular, with the Acre jurisdictional program. In the state of Acre in Brazil, which continues to exist, is one of the good examples that we have of a working jurisdictional program that has been going on for quite some time. For instance, it has already received and put to good use significant funding from KfW through the REDD Early Movers program. And I'm gonna maybe reflect on that experience, hopefully to highlight some important takeaway thoughts and reflections. How can we make jurisdictional and project-based to that matter finance to really get to the hands of those who really matter, indigenous peoples, local communities? In the case of our experience with the CISA program in Brazil, well, first of all, it's important to contextualize the Brazilian reality. We're talking about 65% of the Amazon, about 17% of Brazilian landmass. If you think of Brazil, it is at least in traditional hands of indigenous peoples, not to speak of other traditional communities that are spreading extractive reserves. There are several million hectares in those traditional hands as well. And 99% of indigenous territories are located in Brazil, 270 indigenous ethnicities. So then how to really land climate finance in a way that this very diverse indigenous constituencies can really understand all the processes and standards and, you know, payment for performance, all these things that they're expected, all of a sudden to have to understand and perform accordingly. You know, these are completely different worlds. So back then, 10 years ago, this was a challenge and continues to be a challenge nowadays. For instance, in the case of the Early Movers program, which I overall has been a successful program. Out of, don't quote me on the numbers, but I think there about $18 million were driven to Brazil, to the state of Acre. I believe around 40 million went to the indigenous peoples, local communities in 34 indigenous territories in the state of Acre, 4 million hectares of indigenous lands. There are about 12 million hectares of forests in the state of Acre. And, you know, the way in which the benefit sharing program was set up by the state, which I helped to, you know, was part of the group that was putting that together. To date, I'm not sure to what extent it really was proportional to the stewardship of indigenous peoples in the state. There was consultation as much as possible, but one of the, you know, takeaways, speaking of takeaways, for me was and hopefully this will resonate. I think, you know, how the indigenous community through their associations were expected to absorb the funding. The design of the benefit sharing wasn't directly proportionate to their capacity to absorb. So at the end result, some communities benefited, but not all of them. And in part was because they were not equipped to receive that funding, because there was a bunch of bureaucracy. That was, you know, what the state was able to offer. You know, it's just it is what it is, right? I mean, governments have their systems, right, which are not compatible to how indigenous peoples, you know, go about their days. So I think one of the major challenges, and I was hoping that crystal ball would, but it's kind of cloudy. I was hoping that would come out of that. Is that, you know, how much longer are we going to be expecting that local communities have to perform by the same metrics that Western society has, you know, that we can demonstrate impact? Because I think there is a disconnect there, and I think once we manage to bring these two worlds together, I think they are our best partners in you know, achieving climate mitigation. So. And I'm just to close, I think there is space for both carbon-based projects as well as for jurisdictional programs, of course. And I think perhaps the window of opportunities is through nesting. I think that we are more and more working within that space. And in the case of Brazil, we have a major challenge, because when you have jurisdictional programs, it's very different than, and I really admire the Costa Rica, the work that you've been doing there in Guyana as well. But the Brazilian reality is very different, because you have states that are the size of countries, and yet carbon ownership rights are very, very clear according to the Brazilian legal framework, and that belongs to indigenous peoples according to the constitution, which are not under the jurisdiction of the states. They're under the jurisdiction of the federal government. And hopefully in the next few weeks, the Lula administration will finally regulate the markets. I think I'm optimistic with what is coming. Hopefully it will give us a better direction how to achieve, you know, conservation finance at scale to really drive the change that is needed there.
Thank you, Beto. And I just want to build off that and ask Danielle if you can put your ICVCM hat on. I know you've served multiple roles. You know, there are a lot of things you need. There's a vast array of things you need to do to actually have an effective jurisdictional system. And with the rise of things like ICVCM, can you maybe speak to some of the evolving expectations of buyers with regards to integrity, and how suppliers, right, can design their projects to ensure that they are actually going to meet these requests of the buyers? Because there is often a disconnect between what the demand is looking for, and where the suppliers are seeing their ability to meet those needs.
Sure. Well, I think we have heard very loudly from the real actors what is happening on the ground, what is needed. I gathered some of the elements of previous interventions to also make sense of what we are trying to do at the ICVCM. So we hear from Rosalind the issue of urgency, right? Yes, we want to achieve a scale, but we wanted to have it now, and we want it hopefully in the form of upfront finance in most of the cases. Here you have most of the front runners, but there are other countries that are still trying to modeling through the different stages of readiness. And during my recent days in Nairobi, perhaps something that I resonated very loudly to me from Africa is that there is an issue of trust again. And that, to me, from my political background, I think that's a major threat that we have to the entire system. And hopefully by the COP, these issues of trust will be resolved. But I talk frequently to people in the Forest Climate Leadership Partnership. I talk to governments in the Global South and the Global North. We were with Rosalind, funny enough, in Nairobi in a similar panel like this, with the gentleman, with the ambassador from Norway that leads the LEAF coalition. So let's say the debate got a little bit heated. but that's a reality, and that type of reality check, I think, is wonderful to explore, because it's if governments in the global south are being transparent, it is a positive signal, right? We shouldn't take it as a signal of threat or that they feel disappointed. No, this is just, we really want to meet halfway, right? So building on the entire issue of trust, then we have public scrutiny coming to push the market towards integrity, and I think that's positive. It shows also that the market is getting into a more mature space where we can resolve that public scrutiny and perhaps deliver on solutions. And perhaps what the Integrity Council is trying to do is exactly that. There was an issue of trust from the corporate sector. They wanted to ensure that every ton is a ton, that there are no reputational risks associated with this. So how can we build it? We went about trying to have a very participatory process to understand what are the main building blocks to deliver on integrity. The Integrity Council, jointly with the VCMI, I think we are sisters organizations. We work on the supply side to ensure the integrity is there from the beginning, and VCMI is also looking at the demand side of it, so that the credits are rightly contributing to a net zero decarbonization and not simply offsetting. And through this process, we understand that integrity needs an ecosystem, right? Integrity Council by its own may not be able to deliver, and probably we will not deliver quite right in the first place. We have recently launched and publicly disseminated our core carbon principles. There are 10 principles that can be summarized in three great areas, right? One is whether the emissions deliver on impact, on atmospheric impact, right? Additionality, permanence, and so on. But we also look at governance and how carbon creating programs, whether they are jurisdictional or whether they are the regular standards, how they also operate, how the board of trustees is set up, how they make decisions, whether this is transparent, whether how they are managing in conflict of interest, because that was also affecting the trust in the system, right? And lastly, and perhaps where and Gabriel Abate is here, which is also my co-chair of the expert panel, where we have centered much of the attention is that also coming back to Africa, the message in Africa was, yes, integrity is important, but it should be rooted, highly rooted on fairness and equity. And the third dimension of the principles, they address safeguards, a very strong package of safeguards, looking at what the IFC has been doing in other areas as well, both for social safeguards, but also environmental ones. And then I've been pushing this idea that although we do deliver on environmental impact and atmospheric impact, carbon finance on its own would not be able to deliver on the scale that we really need and the timing that we need. So when you talk about co-benefits, which is no longer the case, right? We have moved into a different narrative, which is sustainable development goals, impact on sustainable goals. If you can really measure that and you can really demonstrate that they are real and you can also verify them, then you are making the carbon credit an instrument of impact finance, which is a 3 trillion market, right? It's just completely different. So we have introduced this in the core carbon principles, how this should be transparently reported, and we have even go ahead and suggest an attribute where the credits that can demonstrate these, they can be by carbon crediting programs, can provide an additional tag. Because when we look at the price and we look how undermined it was, we also noticed that the major ranking prices were for those projects or jurisdictions that can actually demonstrate that the SDG were being impacted. And lastly, we have also introduced a notion of transitions to net zero. Wrapping it up, integrity requires an ecosystem, right? We need a village to raise a child. Integrity is a shared responsibility. The Integrity Council is trying to do as much as we can to facilitate this dialogue, not only among market stakeholders, but particularly with indigenous peoples, right? They have been part of this process because information, and I agree with a colleague from Peru, information is of critical importance, timely information, quality information, access to it in different languages. But beyond that, we are, by the COP, hopefully we will be able to deliver a space for indigenous people that does not belong to the Integrity Council, but for the entire voluntary carbon market, which is an indigenous people and local communities fora, where perhaps indigenous people from different countries may like to discuss how price formation works out. And they would like to also comment and feedback the market, because there are no ways for this communication to take place in a very systematic and structured manner, rather than panels and the other efforts. But again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I will really invite each of you, because I have seen in other panels as well, we will be opening up work programs for continuous improvement. We understand that there are issues that we need to continue to discuss about permanence, about sustainable development and other areas. So I will really look forward to see you there to contribute in this process, because again, integrity is a shared responsibility.
Is it possible to give a quick feedback?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead. Just maybe very fast.
Thank
I
you.
want to give time for our.
Thank you,
audience to
and
ask questions.
thank you very much. So, thank you, Daniel. You've said so many amazing things, and I just want to draw like the attention of, the ICVCM to something. You spoke about the supply side, but how many engagements has the ICVCM had with forest countries? I go about speaking on different panels, different places. I believe I'm highly accessible. I've not had any such engagement. I don't think there's anybody in Ghana who has had such an engagement. And if you are coming up with core carbon principles that are supposed to help the supply side, the question is I am not even familiar with the core carbon principles. How much more indigenous people and local communities? What does it mean really? So I think that as the work advances, and you spoke about the expert working groups, there needs to be a conscious effort really to get us to speak. And the principle should even look at a tiered approach, because not every country is everywhere at every time. And we are coming through with the use of different standards. And all these standards are responding in different ways. And that's why countries, for example, if you talk about safeguards, Ghana has its country approach to safeguards. You need to understand how that works. How have we clarified certain safeguards instruments? If that's not featuring in the core carbon principles, then sorry, the ICVCM is not helping the supply side. You're just going to compound our issues. And so, for the hug you gave me before I sat down, because this chair is always hunting me. So I had to say this on a lighter note. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Quick response.
Okay.
Just very quick. Rosalind, you're completely right. I will never disagree with you. But but here's the thing. Please keep in mind that what the Integrity Council does is that we will look into whether or not carbon crediting programs are more or less aligned with the core carbon principles. We will never be looking at countries on how you guys do it, right? But I agree. I think we need better channels of communications, and we are currently developing a strategy to engage with countries. Because at the end of the day, we are privately led organizations only working on the private area. We didn't have any mandate from the UNFCCC, and we were just being very respectful to that. We understand that what we do may have feedback on what countries does, and that's definitely the case. But so far, we would use the core carbon principles and the assessment framework to look on those carbon crediting programs that voluntarily would like to be subject to the assessment. We cannot just go about examining each of them on our own basis. And the second part of the assessment will look at category of credits. So we will not look only at a REDD type of credits, but we have to look to the different credit types. But I take with me the message. And I would really like, we have been discussing how we really better to communicate with governments and bring you to the table as well, to the extent that is possible, because of we are not an intergovernmental organization.
But
Right?
you are working for us.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully, yes. Hopefully for
Thank
everybody.
Yeah, I really think this dialogue speaks to the push and pull of supply and demand, right? There's not one side of that that's in power, right? If the demand is looking for something that there's not the supply of, there needs to be a working together to figure out what do the people who are demanding this really need, but what are the suppliers really able to provide? What works for them? Because we said before, all these countries are making an economic decision to do this instead of something else, right? So they want to do this, right? But they're making an economic decision and that needs to be recognized, right? We only have, like each country just has the land area of their country and they have to use it the most effective way possible, right? We have been very talkative and I apologize because we were we started quite late, but I want to bring in a couple room for a few questions. Maybe we can take 3 questions in a row. And then we'll have the team, the panelists answer those. Questions?
Thank you. For Toshu, if you said it was 15% of the proceeds from the jurisdictional went to the indigenous communities. What happened to the other 85%?
So thank you for that question. So for the 85%, the indigenous people will still benefit from that because the government will also invest in other infrastructures like roads, developing schools, building better schools, healthcare facilities, building airstrips in remote areas. So when you, in the overall picture, that indigenous people are benefit more than 15%. Because they are also entitled to the other 85%.
Thank you for bringing the voices from the field to speak with us today. The negative press is particularly focused on REDD projects. If you could talk to the Guardian reporter, what would be kind of 3 main themes that you would say?
Are these people worthless? Is this work worthless? Is the world worse off or better off for having had this financing mechanism over the past 15 years? Answer with honesty. Go talk to the people who have been the change agents and the beneficiaries of the change over this period of time. Tell the truth.
And I would add, you know, I was almost killed literally because of the Suri Carbon project. I had to be with soldiers going to the forest with Almir Surui, where the reporters were attacking us because we had a market, hopefully, solution. So it would be great. I'd love to talk more with the reporters. And the thing is, while there are things that need to be fixed, but where is the discourse and the efforts? If it was a percentage of the effort that have been put to discredit carbon credits, were to be put to leverage more direct financing to the indigenous peoples, I think we'll be in a much better place than we are today. So I think the shift has to focus. Focus has to shift.
Thank you. I'm Clea Paz Rivera from UNDP. It's just a question on the ex ante funding and the enabling conditions. Because wouldn't it be better to recognize the limitations of market-based mechanisms to fund some of these issues, the enabling condition, ex ante financing, governance, and rather than see it as opposite, financing mechanisms, to see how they can be complemented and sequence each other in a way that really fill the adequate niche. And that goes, I think, for Rosalind, Jorge Mario, and Fermin probably. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I guess it goes back to the point I made initially, that when we say support, then the thinking is as in you are sitting somewhere and you're just coming in to support a process. And it's really responding to the question you're asking. So it's not just about support, it's an equal responsibility. So even if the request is for upfront advance, it's not, or upfront financing, it's not as if that money is totally forgone or you're not going to recoup it, but it's that part of the responsibility that you have to fulfill to ensure that this whole process that we are driving together moves forward. And bear in mind that, I mean, for the country to also say that we want to shift towards this particular positive purpose is already a risk that is taken, and it's a huge risk. if you consider the whole emissions for the African continent, it's just about 4%. Heads of states and other governments would just say, oh, we are just sitting. Actually, we don't even believe in this climate change. Let's just mine out all our forests and cut down all the trees. But that's not the case. So you can clearly see that policies are coming up to support the move in a positive direction. And that's why we are calling for this actual thinking of not just seeing yourself as an investor, but it's a corporate responsibility that we are all bearing. And if I could add one last topic to the request that was asked about the Guardian, I would say that we can never pay for a tree. Nobody can pay for a tree. Nobody can pay for a forest. No matter the flaws that have been found, trust me, they don't even compensate for the actual value of the work that is going on to preserve these forests. Thank you.
Okay, take one more response, sorry. Sorry, we have so little time.
Gracias. Sí, gracias. Sí, tal vez rápidamente. Creo que aquí hemos discutido lo difícil que ha sido que los recursos lleguen para el fin establecido. Y también, entonces, es parte de la tarea de nosotros, tanto como gobierno como ciudadanos costarricenses, que los recursos se inviertan de la mejor manera. Y la mejor manera, creemos nosotros, que se inviertan es que sean los propios, en este caso, territorios indígenas, los que definan cuáles son las prioridades de inversión y que la transferencia de recursos sea, no puede ser el 100%, pero ojalá sea el 95% de esos recursos que se transfieran y sean pocos los que se queden en los costos de transacción, porque las necesidades de inversión en los territorios indígenas son infinitamente mayores de las grandes posibilidades que nosotros como representantes de gobierno tenemos para ayudarlos en su desarrollo.
So sorry, I've been told that our time is up in the room, and I really apologize that we had to start late because of some organizational issues. So thank you guys, everyone. I think it's very clear that, you know, these messages from the actual countries where this is happening is this is complicated. It takes a whole of society approach. And we need to really start building this. We can't wait for all these systems to be perfect before we keep going, right? We need to start on this journey together. And this journey will not be a perfect line. It will be quite windy, but we need to begin it as rapidly as possible and recognize that the countries where this is happening, where jurisdictional REDD and other kind of efforts are being done, these countries want to have this be the approach that they use to manage their systems, but they also have to make it an economic and fiscally responsible decision for their own country as well, right? This isn't only something, they're not doing this to assist the world. They have to look at what their country is faced with, that this is an effective and an efficient approach to managing their lands. So thanks to everyone. I'm sure the speakers will be available to chat after as well.